Now, Cromer Town Football Club in Norfolk don't get into the news very often, but they're caught up in a bizarre legal wrangle which could see them forced out of their ground.
The Crabs have played at Cabell Park since 1922 when they were bequeathed the land by a rich local landowner. But a clause stipulated the lease would expire 21 years after the death of King Edward VII's final descendant. And deciding when that happened has caused big problems.
King Olav V of Norway on a visit to the UK. But when he died back in 1991, not many people would have known that 21 years later his death could mean Cromer Town Football Club losing their ground. It was given in trust to the club and town by wealthy local landowner Evelyn Bond Cabell in 1922. This is where it gets complicated. They can stay until 21 years after the death of the last descendant of King Edward VII, and that descendant was thought to be King Olav.
It appears that it was quite common practice in those days that when a trust, a non-charitable trust, was set up, that they had to establish some means of determining its end date. And it was quite common to actually lay this down as relating to the reigning monarch of the time.
Much poring over of family trees followed. It may have seemed clear to some, but the mayor of Cromer had other ideas.
I rang up Burke's Peerage, I've got a friend who works there, and said, were there any descendants of Edward VII born after the document, but within 9 months, and therefore would be suitable for this act? And he went through the records and said, yes, there's this guy, the Earl of Harwood, who at this point last May was still living. And he was a descendant of Edward VII that was, for the purposes of the law, in being at the time that this thing was drawn up.
He was in being in 1922 because he was in his mother's womb and was born 2 months later. This new descendant of Edward VII died last year. That means the club could have 20 years left at Cabell Park, but no one knows for sure. David Wernham, BBC Look East, Cromer.
What an extraordinary story.
Yeah, I'm still lost.
Very confusing.